Hello! Today I'm going to be taking a look at these 3 boxes of Schmincke Supergranulating watercolour paints, Volcano, Desert and Shire. I have been meaning to film this video for quite a long time and other things have popped up, but today I've decided that I'm not waiting even a single day longer, so let's get into them! Can you tell I'm excited? I have other videos on the sets that they released previous to these ones. I'm going to attach a playlist to the end of this video and probably in the description as well, so you can view all of my other videos because I'm starting to build quite a collection of these Supergranulation ones, and I'm sure you may be interested in seeing some of the other sets that they've released. So first things first, I will take the plastic off these ones. That's better, now they're not reflecting off the studio lights. So each Supergranulation set is in a lovely wooden box with the Schmincke logo emblazoned upon it. And in a previous video I've actually painted on my other sets of boxes. So for example, this is the Galaxy set. I painted these with acrylics and that's another video which will be in the playlist. I am no doubt going to be doing that on these boxes as well. That will be a future video, so be sure to subscribe for those shenanigans. Let's open them and see what the tubes are like. I'm opening these for the first time. I have not seen them either because they were in the plastic. It has been killing me to not open these sooner, I can tell you that. And here they all are. Beautiful 15mm tubes. I do love a 15mm tube, but they just look so much beefier than the 5mm ones, which are tiny. They look really nice. They are in a cardboard holder as well, just to kind of keep them from moving around too much. And in this set we have Volcano Yellow, Volcano Orange, Volcano Red, Volcano Violet, and Volcano Brown. Next up is the Desert one. Here we go. So we have Desert Yellow, Orange, Brown, Green, and Grey. That doesn't look like grey to me. This is going to be an interesting set to swatch out. Sometimes these colours don't really match what they look like when you paint them. And then we have this set, which is Shire. And another load of beautiful looking tubes here. All of these look green. We've got yellow, olive, green, blue and grey. But they all have that greenish tinge to them, so that one should be interesting. That's going to be quite a limited palette to paint with, and I've got to come up with some paintings for all of these. But first of all, I'm going to swatch them all because that usually gives me some inspiration just seeing the colours. And even faster than that, I need to squeeze the tubes out into this palette so that I can label them and then just have them all there ready to go. This is the same palette I used in my previous videos. I've cleaned it all up. I labelled all of the colours with a Sharpie marker pen and I used some rubbing alcohol to spray on there to take off all the marker once I was done. It cleaned up pretty well, so I'm just going to use this one again. It was easy just to have them all like this. It's funny how it turns out the labelling was probably the easiest part of this video. You know, when you have days when things just don't go right? This was one of them for me, but we'll get to that. I'm using a permanent marker because a whiteboard marker is just going to rub off really quickly. And here I am squeezing all of the paints in, only putting in a small amount, which is going to come back to haunt me a bit later, and I had to put the violet in because I'd opened the tube by accident and it had all come out, so I just quickly put the paint in before it could go everywhere, and now I'm trying to do the other colours in order just so I don't get myself too confused. It doesn't matter how hard I try, I almost always make a mess of squeezing paints out, especially when they're 15mm tubes, because they're usually overfilled, and so when you open it, paint has a tendency to rush out really quickly. The other issue I was having with these particular tubes is that a lot of them were actually separating from the binder, so I was getting a lot of this goopy gum arabic, which is really hard to mix back in with the paints, I find. It's not so noticeable at the moment, but a few times I had to squeeze more paint out and it was doing this the whole time. Oh, it was so frustrating. It's because a lot of the pigments are heavy minerals and so the particles are larger and they do come away from binder a lot more easily than fine particled pigments. That's something I might have to explore further down the track, but let's just say this pouring session took a whole lot longer than it needed to. I was going to accuse them of not putting the pigment numbers on the tubes, but I found it. There it is up the top. So I will write all the pigment numbers down for the colours so we can see what they are when I swatch them. After finishing all the prep work, I'm finally ready to swatch them. Hooray! I've written down all of the pigment numbers. You will see some of them feature heavily, like this PY159, and I will talk a bit more about them once I've done some research. And here's where the fun really begins. During the time it took me to roll up this chart, the paints had dried in the palette, and that Volcano yellow did not want to re-wet at all. Brilliant start. So we have a pigment PY159 that we are going to see in the orange as well. This is zirconium praseodymium silicate, whatever that is. All I know is that I hated it immediately. It's such a weak yellow and it just did not want to reactivate. The Volcano red PR108 also isn't much better. This is a cadmium red deep and it's just very weakly tinting. I liked the Volcano violet, which had a mix of that red and synthetic cobalt violet hue. That's an interesting one. Volcano brown is black iron oxide mixed in with the cadmium red deep. That one was okay too. I was trying to make the yellow stronger but not having much luck. I'll move on to desert, where once again that yellow was featured in this desert yellow. Ugh. The PBR7 is brown iron oxide, so that's a very natural granulating pigment. Desert orange also has the yellow, combined with zinc iron chromite brown. I feel like I'm doing a chemistry lesson here. And then we've got desert brown, which is a mix of yellow, red and black. That PBK11 is the black iron oxide, also called lunar black by Daniel Smith, so that might be quite familiar to a lot of people. Then we have the red mixed with cobalt green dark. That one actually turned out really interesting once it had dried. And then desert grey, which is a mix of the yellow and black. On to Shire, where once again we have that yellow pigment. It's in all three sets, which is super annoying because I don't like it. But here it's strangely mixed with a synthetic cobalt violet. I don't know, it still looks yellow to me. Shire olive is a bit greener. That's because they mixed it with blue. That is a cerulean blue, I think. And then we have Shire green, which I really like. This is with the yellow, but also with Viridian, and it makes a really bright green, so I do like that one. Shire blue is a mix of three pigments, that same yellow, ultramarine blue, and cobalt green dark. I like that mix actually, that one's really pretty. Last one is Shire grey with yellow, cobalt blue deep, and black iron oxide. So as you can see, a lot of the same pigments are used for all three sets, and here's a close-up of them while they're dried. Well, they are certainly very granulating, I'll give them that. I like that Volcano violet, you can really see the difference between the red and the violet pigments. And then up to the desert, yeah, they're okay, but just that yellow is so weakly tinting and I just don't care for it very much. Desert green is my favourite here, I think, because that also splits into two pigments. And then we've got the Shire ones, which the top two are kind of like meh, but I do like the Shire green, blue and grey. I think those three are pretty good, especially that blue. You can see how it's got blue and green in it. And now on to the paintings. The first one is Volcano, and guess what my picture's going to be? So obvious sometimes. The yellow worked a bit better here, and that's only because I put in some fresh paint, so the paint is still wet and it had not yet hardened to a rock. So I was able to achieve a brighter value from it. It's extremely uncommon for yellow and red to be granulating, so that's why they've used the same pigments, because there's not a big variety to choose from when it comes to these colours. But the price paid for achieving such granulation is the fact that they just aren't as highly tinting as other reds and yellows out there. So it was quite frustrating because I really wanted to have bright lava and it just wasn't coming out as nice as I would have liked, especially the orange. That one almost seemed to react with the air once I squeezed it out of the tube and it picked up a more brownish tinge. I don't know if that's my imagination, but that's what I was seeing on the palette. The red and the yellow on their own though were fine. They did not react with air and change colour. It was just the two pigments together. Really strange. So according to the website Handprint, which is a very useful resource for pigment numbers, this PY159 is a semi-transparent, staining, light-valued, dull yellow pigment, and I would say that description is bang on. It is not a commonly used yellow pigment for paints. It's just, I guess, because it's granulating that they chose it, but yeah, it's not great. Out of this set, the two colours that I liked the most were the Volcano Violet and the Volcano Brown, which is what I'm using now. Those two had a much larger value range, so I could go darker with them as well as light, though I did have to build up the layers to get that value because I was still struggling with it. You could possibly see how difficult it is to re-wet them, and I had to keep adding fresh paint just so that I could get a darker value. It was pretty frustrating, but I managed to get a painting out of this. I used a completely different reference photo, but it still ended up looking like the picture on the box, which is hilarious. It was totally unintentional. I think my favourite bit are the violet clouds. Onwards to desert, and I of course had to paint a camel. I really like camels, and here's an interesting fact. Australia has the world's largest population of feral camels. They were introduced here roughly 400 years ago, and of course the environment is just perfect for them, so their population numbers exploded, and now they're almost like a native species of Australia. It's most odd, but I have seen wild camels, and the place we saw them was out at Uluru, so I've got Uluru there in the background. The Great Australian Desert is the 4th largest desert by area in the world, so I figured this would be good to paint. The only problem is that this desert set is extremely limited when it comes to colours, and I would have loved to have had a blue for the sky, and considering that the two largest deserts in the world are Antarctica and the Arctic, it would be really great to have some blue. Never mind, I can stop whinging over that. I used orange and yellow in the sky like a sandstorm had just passed through, which is not unusual, I guess. I quite enjoyed the colour palette of the desert, but once again very low tinting, and so I had to go over with many layers because the paper also was absorbing the colour and causing a big drying shift. The two colours which I most liked in this set were the Desert Green and Desert Grey, both of which I'm using on the foreground here, and if you see on the left quarter how the ground has gone two-toned, that's the desert green, so it had split out from red and green, and I thought that was really pretty. That was my overall favourite colour out of the set. I mean, I'll give credit to Schmincke. They weren't wrong when they said they're super granulating colours. All of them are. There's not one in any of the sets which doesn't granulate, so it does as advertised, but alas, there are downfalls to it, and most of it is just that low tinting strength, which is really bothering me, as you can probably tell. I did my best to build it up, and I'm actually quite happy with how this painting turned out. I didn't use any pen or anything, I just wanted to showcase the paints on their own and how much I could achieve from them. I think the camel's really cute. On to the last one, Shire. And of course I had to paint something from the Shire out of Lord of the Rings. So I've got Gandalf visiting Bilbo, and he's about to knock on the door at Bag End. And of course I had to use Shire Grey to paint Gandalf the Grey. I really like this colour. I think it's a really good one for monochromatic studies. It's a lovely soft grey with a slightly greenish tinge because it does have both yellow and cobalt blue in it along with black. So all three are granulating colours. It is also granulating, as you can see here, and I like it. But I have to admit I did struggle with this set because once again it is extremely limited in its colour palette, much like the desert one and probably a couple of the other sets as well that I've reviewed previously. It's really hard just to get one of them because there's only so much you can do with it. I think the idea is that you're supposed to collect more than one set so that you can have a wider range of colours, and they aren't cheap, so it's an expensive venture buying these things. However, I'm pretty sure on Jackson's Art at least, the tubes also come as individuals, so you could probably just buy a few of them and cherry pick the colours that you like out of each set rather than having all of them, because there's a few here which I would quite happily not have just because I don't like that yellow pigment, and so a lot of the colours using it are just not that great. The Shire green is quite pretty though. It's probably the brightest of all of the colours I used in this video, brighter than the yellow itself, which is kind of annoying. And also I liked the Shire blue, which I've painted on the door and mixed in with the Shire green. Otherwise, I did struggle quite a lot on this painting to get some values, and I was wishing I had used a pen just so I could draw some lines on it and make it a bit more interesting. But no, I didn't. I only used the paints, and I can quite safely say that one Supergranulation set on its own is probably not going to be very useful, and they're also pretty hard to work with just because none of them really re-wet very easily. It's just the nature of those heavy granulating pigments. So if you're a beginner artist, I probably don't recommend these. They're really hard to use and I was struggling so much with them. I would say the best use for Supergranulation paints is for really large, loose artworks, especially for backgrounds and things like that where you want to get a bit of texture. So let me know in the comments if you think these paints are worth it or if they're just a bit of a gimmick. I'd be really curious to know. I also had to use quite a lot of paint in these pictures because a little does not go a long way when it comes to Supergranulation colours. So I'm finished with my paintings. It was not all that I hoped for, unfortunately. I wanted them to be a bit better. I just don't really like the yellow and the red very much, and the colours were just not as vibrant as I would have liked. I'm still quite sure that the other sets that I have with the blue ones are brighter than these. But anyway, we got there in the end. I have the Volcano, which has actually grown on me since I painted this, and I'm liking it a bit more. And then over the page, I do like the Camel too. I think this is probably my favourite of the three. And then the Shire one, which I'm not so keen on just because this is not super great, but it's okay-ish, I suppose. So I'm still on the fence as to whether I like these three sets as much as I like the others. I think that putting them all together will be more helpful. Once I've got the blues and the violets, the blacks from the other sets, I think it will be better. If I'm to choose my favourites from these ones though, the Volcano set definitely has to be the Volcano Violet. I think that is a fabulous colour. I also really like this Desert Green because it's split into two colours. And then the other that I like from the Shire set is the blue. Those are definitely my three favourites. I'll just quickly switch to the swatch page. So the ones I like are that Volcano Violet, the Desert Green, and the Shire Blue. Funnily, they're all on that same row. And I just think they have turned out really well. The browns and the greys are also quite good, as is this green here, but some of the other colours are a bit bleh, especially the ones that have that yellow pigment in. Not keen at all on this yellow. It's just so dull, and yeah, I get that it's granulating, but it's just, yeah, not my favourite in the world. I think these would be much better used straight from the tube than pouring them into pans and leaving them to dry. The yellow especially is really hard to activate with water once it has gone dry, and it goes like a rock. Ugh, so difficult and frustrating. But that's all I have for today. I will be doing another video on the haze set. That will be a bonus coming up relatively soon. But if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and maybe you'd like to check out some of the other videos I've done in the Supergranulating set. And I will see you all again really soon in my next video. I'll swatch you later. Bye!